We're going to record. All right. Well, welcome everyone tonight to the what is this, June Kansas Len Family Education Series. I can't believe it's June 2023 already. We're going to be talking about January 2024 too soon. Anyhow, I'm Stephanie Coleman. I am the family faculty mentor at Kansas Lend, and I am the one who brings all of these to you every month. This month is Healthy Lifestyles, Practical Strategies to Improve Nutrition and Physical Activity with Dr. Brittany Lancaster. Just a little housekeeping. As long as the slides are up, no one's going to see you live on Facebook because we are streaming this live on Facebook. So if you turn your camera on and the slides are off, you will be seen on Facebook. So want to say that to my Zoom viewers. And for those of you on Facebook, if you have questions, please put them in the chat and we will get them asked of Brittany. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Brittany Lancaster.
Thank you for that lovely introduction to this talk. So yeah, as she said, I'm Brittany Lancaster. I have a PhD in clinical psychology. I've been working both clinically and in my research to find different ways to help promote healthy lifestyles. So this is something I am super, super passionate about and very excited to talk with you guys about today. Our talk today is going to cover a few different things. In a short time, I think I could give a lot more information about each of these if we had the time for it. So we'll briefly cover each of these topics. So one is starting with the importance of healthy habits. So why we're even talking about the behaviors that I'll be talking about today. Then moving into physical activity recommendations. So having an understanding of how much activity you're even supposed to be getting. And then moving into different fun ways to move your body and ideas to engage in those behaviors. And then scooting into nutrition recommendations. There's just all sorts of information out in the world about what healthy nutrition looks like. So trying to give you some concrete things that you can move forward with. And then specifically talking about strategies for picky eating for a little bit, as picky eating can be more common in our youth with neurodevelopmental disorders. And so trying to give some practical strategies that can be helpful with that. And then lastly, wrapping up with goal setting. And so the reason that this one is on here is because I think when we talk about a lot of recommendations with respect to physical activity and nutrition, it can sometimes feel a little overwhelming, and I don't want it to feel that way. I'm hoping to provide you guys with some education. But then, I think it's about thinking about where you and your family are at right now and what might be a good goal for you and focusing on something small. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. So before we get into all of it, I just wanted to talk a little bit about what I mean by healthy lifestyles. So I'll just say this is a very wide and broad area that many variables are important for. So today we're going to focus on nutrition and physical activity, and I'll get into some of the reasons why, because they're so important for our health. But that doesn't mean to understate many other important parts of healthy lifestyles, like getting good sleep, dental hygiene, stress management. So there's kind of a variety of health behaviors that are all really important, and oftentimes they all interact. So for example, if I sleep poorly tonight, I'm going to have a more difficult time tomorrow making healthy choices. And so I don't mean to understate the importance of any of these, and I'd be happy to talk about how these impact them as you guys have questions. Impact nutrition and physical activity. All right, so scooting into the importance of healthy habits, why do these things matter? Talking a little bit about physical activity first. One of the things I love the most about physical activity as a psychologist is that it can greatly improve your mood. There has been multiple research studies showing that it can be just as effective as an antidepressant, which is, I think, really cool. It also reduces anxiety. And so that can be a really awesome aspect of it on your mental health side. And it also, of course, impacts your physical health as well. People that regularly exercise feel more energy during the day, oftentimes have an easier time getting around, and they also sleep better at night. So going back to that previous slide, thinking about how all of these things interact. If I sleep better, I might have more energy to engage in physical activity the next day. But also if I engage in physical activity, I wear myself out, I'm much more likely to sleep better tonight. Additionally, engaging in physical activity, of course, helps our cardiovascular health and our brain health and reduces our risk for chronic disease. Specific to those with neurodevelopmental disorders, some really cool research has shown that engaging in regular physical activity also improves executive functioning. So our ability to switch from one task to another, our ability to plan out actions and control our impulses, all that improves the more we exercise. And so that is pretty exciting, in my opinion. And then talking a little bit about nutritious foods and why we should eat those. And so this graphic is from the CDC, but I really like it. And I included it in my slides because I think it shows just how much eating nutritious foods can impact you. It's not really focused on a single thing. You know, if you, for example, eat this food, you might weigh a certain weight, but instead it impacts so many aspects of our life. For kiddos, it supports healthy growth and our brain development. It also supports our eye, skin, and teeth health, right? Our bones, every aspect. And one of the reasons I'm really harping on these first two slides, because you might think, I know physical activity and eating nutritious foods are important. Like everyone kind of baseline knows that. I think though, that oftentimes when we get really stressed or overwhelmed, we've got a lot of things going on in our lives. These are some of the first things that tend to go away. And that is often because you're trying to dedicate those resources to other things. And I completely understand that. But I'd like to take a minute to think about if we invested a little bit in these, even in those stressful times, it can actually help us handle those times. For example, looking at this picture, eating nutritious food helps boost our immunity. It helps keep us healthy, like even from common colds and things like that. So, you know, as you're stressed and going through all this, we're actually more likely to get sick and things like that, which can make the stressful times even harder. And so, you know, the more we can invest in keeping these healthy habits up, even in those hard times, it can make us have kind of more resources to be able to handle these things, right? We can sleep better at night because we're still moving our body. The less tired we are, we're going to be able to handle that next day a little bit easier. I also know this is easier said than done. I am just giving you guys some things to think about. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why this is specifically important for this group, for our folks with neurodevelopmental disorders. So the graphs I have on the slides here are specifically comparing youth with a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder compared to those without a diagnosis. So I know there are other neurodevelopmental disorders, but these slides are limited to that. But I do think it extends, our research suggests it extends to our other populations. So looking at our graphs here, the orange bar are those with the diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. And so if you're looking at the left here with our overweight and obesity statistics, our youth with autism are disproportionately affected by overweight and obesity. So they're more likely to experience this. And then looking at the right-hand side, looking at physical activity, this is the average daily minutes youth are engaging in physical activity. So those without autism spectrum disorder are exercising about 50 minutes a day, which is still under the recommended value. But our youth with autism spectrum disorder are around 29 minutes, so quite a bit less. This pattern holds true when we look at nutrition. So our youth with autism spectrum disorder are drinking more sugar-sweetened beverages, engaging in eating more snack food and less fruits and vegetables each day. And so all these things kind of compound and impact our health over time. I think this is for a variety of reasons that really can't be simply stated as to kind of why this discrepancy occurs. I do think a large component of it, though, is that, we only have so many resources. And when we've got lots of things going on in our lives, like I said, some of these health behaviors tend to just be one of the first things that we don't really think about too much, or we just go with the easiest thing at the time. And so that makes a lot of sense to me. And so I also know that our youth with neurodevelopmental disorders oftentimes have a harder time trying new things, or difficulty time with different textures and things like that. And so it can be hard for them to try. And as a parent, we might also want to avoid a meltdown or a push in that area when we're dealing with other things. So there's a lot going on here. And so we definitely want to, keep all of this in mind as we think about how we would approach some of these behaviors. Okay, so scooting into some the physical activity recommendations. So I have it in here for both youth and adults. So we'll talk about our adults first. So physical activity recommendations don't differ for those with neurodevelopmental disorders or those who do not. So for all of our adults, we do want to be getting at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity a week. So 150 minutes is a weird number, right? But that equates to about 30 minutes of physical activity 5 days a week, which is quite a bit. Most of us aren't hitting that value, but it's a good thing to strive for. And so I think this moderate intensity thing can be a little confusing. So I'll talk to you guys a little bit about how you would know if you're engaging in a moderate activity. So in our kiddos, we talk about moderate to vigorous. And so I'll talk about that too. So a good way to tell is doing something called the talk test. And so if you're doing light physical activity or you're being sedentary, you should be able to talk just like I'm talking now, maybe even sing me a little song, right? It might not sound great or it might sound beautiful, but you could do that plenty fine if you were engaging in light or sedentary physical activity. But if you were engaging in moderate physical activity, you'd be able to talk to me, but you could not sing. That would be a little too difficult because you're really getting your heart rate up, getting moving. So that can be a good way to tell if you're kind of being intense enough with your exercise. You shouldn't be able to sing. And then if we're talking about vigorous physical activity, it should be difficult to talk. So if I came up to you during a run and I was like, how was your day? You should be like, oh, I can't speak right now, right? That's when you're getting that vigorous physical activity. So we want at least 150 minutes of that a week. And additional to that is working on strength training for 2 days a week. So this means like doing body weight exercises or lifting weights and trying to get at all of our different muscle groups. So something I think that's really important to say is you can't do this right now or maybe ever. It's about being as active as you can in the meantime and trying to avoid any too much sedentary time. So not any, but sedentary time is when we're just kind of sitting for a good long period of time, which is what I'm going to be doing during this talk, right? But generally, we wouldn't recommend you're sitting kind of for longer than an hour or so. But oftentimes our jobs or our personal lives are not conducive to that. We might have to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day, or we might go home at night and watch 4 hours of TV. And all of that is really sedentary. So even if you weren't going to get up and do the 30 minutes of physical activity that day, if you could break up that sedentary time, that would be super great for your health. And so we'll talk about some ways to do that today. Then when we think about our kiddos, the recommendation is a little bit different. They're expected to get a little bit more. This is because their bodies are growing and it's so important for their development and health. So for our youth, we want 60 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity every single day. I do think that sometimes parents overestimate how much their kids might be getting at school. That's because you don't know and you just kind of assume, but definitely during recess or PE, there's a lot of standing around time. So even if these activities are happening during the day, like I showed you, even those youth without autism are only getting 50 minutes of physical activity on average. And so not quite getting to that hour. So things to think about, can we do anything at home, especially during the summer, right? What can we do to help get our kiddos at this rate? And this should also include muscle strengthening and bone strengthening at least 3 days a week. So for kiddos, we don't usually talk about this as like weightlifting or things like that. Instead, bone strengthening activities are like jumping activities. So doing jump rope would be a good example. And muscle strengthening can be like climbing on the jungle gym, right? Things that are just using our muscles regularly. Okay, so there are all sorts of ways to move your body, and I have a few different slides of different things we can think about. The number one easiest one for most people, not anyone, for most people, is to go for a brisk walk. So think about that talk test. It should be difficult to sing, so not a casual stroll, but a brisk walk. This one's usually a good option for people, assuming you feel like you live in a safe neighborhood and it's comfortable weather, right? So there are some limitations, but as long as you can have access to this, it can be a really, really great one, and it can be easily worked into routine, like your family goes for a walk after dinner every night. My personal favorite is having a dance party. I oftentimes recommend to break up sedentary behavior is for like if you watch TV with your family and you have, for example, maybe you're watching Netflix with shows that go back to back. We used to have commercials that we could work with and maybe do some movement during that. But now I think of, instead of skipping your intro song of whatever TV show you're watching, can you have everyone in the house, do an interpretive dance to that theme song, right? Or can you, between episodes, can you pause and see who can do the most jumping jacks in 30 seconds, right? Have little fun challenges to break up that sedentary time. Other ideas are up here. One of the most important things about when we try to move our body more is to find something that we enjoy. And that's why I'm going to talk about different activities in the next couple of slides, because if you hate running and I say, you need to exercise 150 minutes a week, go run, right? 5 times a week, you're going to hate it and you're going to stop and you're not going to want to do it. And that makes a lot of sense, right? None of us want to do things we don't want to do. That makes sense. But the idea is finding something you love, and that is different for everyone. So there's lots of ideas on here, and I really recommend you just try them, right? Sometimes we think we're not going to like something, but then we do it and we're like, actually, compared to the other things, that was not bad. I could regularly do that, and I feel better after I do that. So things like swimming, right? Jump rope, frisbee in the park, right? Can create some fun and good memories with your family. We can't always get out in the world and do things. It could be not great weather. We could have physical limitations. We could have different variables that matter here. So it's also important to think about different ways we can move our body at home. So there are actually some really cool programs that have already been developed that are worth looking into. So these are put out by the National Center for Health, Physical Activity, and Disability. So one, they've actually made a YouTube playlist of a bunch of different inclusive exercise from home videos. So there's all sorts of things for people with and without mobile limitations, for people of varying ages, but they're fun, different ways that you can move your body at home. They don't require equipment. And so this can be a really structured way, right? Maybe on Tuesdays, we do an exercise video at home. They also have this 14 Weeks to a Healthier You program. So this is a free program that gives the physical activity and nutrition support for those with mobility limitations. And so this can be a great thing to consider if you fall into that category, or if you have difficulty moving. They give cooking classes, recipe ideas, and inclusive physical activity. Went too far. Another really awesome option is to move your body at home is physical activity video games. These are getting cooler and cooler. If you maybe, I think I tried my first one in high school, which was a long time ago. They were okay, but they are getting really awesome and really inclusive, which is really, really cool. So thinking of some of the video games that I'm talking about right now are on the Nintendo Switch. So obviously there's a cost with buying some of these systems, but if you already happen to have one, or if you don't, the Nintendo Switch would be the best, I think, for multiple different physical activity games. But their big one right now is Ring Fit, which allows you to make all sorts of accommodations. Let's say you have a knee injury, or you have an arm injury, a neck injury, you can put all of that in there, and it can be a lot more inclusive, but also it's just a really fun game and people really seem to enjoy it. And it's actually been tested in populations with neurodevelopmental disorders. So it's a really good one. So some games listed on the slide here that would definitely be worth checking out. I also listed some phone apps. So I think for teens and adults, Fit On is a really good app to consider. The reason I like it is it's the workouts are free. Additionally, they have a large variety of different types of activities. So like as we were getting at before, it's about finding something you like. So they have boxing, dancing, yoga, strength-based things, Pilates. And so finding something, you know, if you're not sure what you like, you can take a different class every time you exercise, and that can be really great. They also have a lot of really good stretching videos that I take advantage of. And then we also have Go Noodle. So many of you might have heard of this. Go Noodle is used very commonly in schools nowadays. And so a lot of kids already like it and think it's really fun, but these are short little activity videos that you can put on and get your family moving. And then, of course, you can always engage in a formal sport. So one reason to do this is that it can kind of require some regularity, right? Where you're going to have to go to practices and games and regularly engage in that activity, which can be excellent. And also some more social exposure for kiddos. Okay, so just a couple of extra tips and tricks for increasing physical activity. So one is to work as a team. Everybody in your family needs to engage in physical activity. It's just a true thing for us as humans, right? So how much of that can we do together and make it a fun family activity that can really help people engage in that behavior? So like I talked about with the going for a walk after dinner, right? This kind of combines working as a team and having it be part of your routine. That's my next bullet point there, which is to go after dinner every day. That's just the plan, but everybody in your family can get moving, and that can make it kind of the expectation, right? The reason it's so important to have things as a part of your routine rather than making a decision to do it each day is because when we have to decide each day whether or not we're going to exercise, we take into account a lot of variables. So what I mean is if I say, I wonder if I should exercise after I give this talk today, I'm going to say, well, I got done a little later than I normally do. I'm tired. Oh, there was that one thing at work today that kind of bugged me. I think I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to take all that into account. Versus if it's on my calendar that every single night at 8 o'clock, I go for a walk, I'm going to just leave here. I'm not going to say, am I going to exercise or not? I'm going to say, I have to exercise at 8. That's my plan, right? Now, I can always bail out of that if there's something big going on, or if I really don't feel well, but having it just be the plan or the thing I'm going to do can help make sure I'm not leaving it up to each day of my mood to decide. It just is part of my evening activities. And then the other thing, sprinkle it in during the day. So this is all about reducing that sedentary time, not sitting for too long. So if you can't build it in true kind of moderate to vigorous physical activity, can you just try to stand up and move your body a little bit more? Can you walk to the water cooler, at least twice a day during your workday intentionally, kind of an extra thing? For kiddos, this could mean, taking, breaks on our TV time or our video game time, right? And engaging in a little bit of movement. So that could be as a parent, you saying like, after an hour, like, oh, awesome, now it's come time to do this one task, and then you can go back, right? And even though they just moved for a second, they've gotten up and kind of got their blood flowing, which can be excellent. Additionally, there's some research to suggest that animals can be beneficial for encouraging physical activity, specifically for those with neurodevelopmental disorders. So that can be something to consider as well. This is because we've got to get up to play with the animal, if it's a dog, out to the bathroom, but also it can be a fun, easy way to encourage physical activity. It's just saying, hey, it's time to take the dog for a walk, which is really great for a dog's mental health and their physical health. So that can be a way to encourage that. All right, scooting forward to talk a little bit about some nutrition recommendations. So today we're going to focus mostly on the myplate.gov recommendation. And so I think if you look around for even 5 seconds on the internet, you can find all sorts of different health recommendations and diet recommendations. You could be told to fast for 18 hours a day, or to never eat a carb again, or to never eat fruits again, and all different sorts of recommendations. And honestly, it can be hard to determine who's right and what you're supposed to be doing. And so I think my opinion is that the easiest way is to follow a guideline like this. So just working on making sure your meals are balanced. If we can have balanced meals, that can really help shape our health and move us in the right direction. There's no really good benefit in cutting out a food group. All different food groups provide great and wonderful benefits to our body. And so we want to make sure that we're eating all of them. And so instead, what I'm going to recommend to you guys is really trying to follow this My Plate guide in each of your meals and snacks. And this can help make sure we're having a balanced diet. So what this My Plate guide is it's looking at having half of your plate always being fruits or vegetables. And so making sure that is kind of just a core component of all your meals. Half my plate has to be fruits or veggies. How am I going to get that on here? And then the other half of the plate are grains and protein. We want ideally whole grains, maybe about half the time, but at a minimum, having kind of this half of the plate be grains and protein. And then also we want some dairy as well. This could be in the context of milk or yogurt or cheeses. So I'm going to give you guys some examples of what this might look like. So these people have these nice, beautiful plates that are all labeled that we probably all don't have at home, but I think they do a nice visual of showing what a plate may look like, right? So for example, on the far left, right, I think we've got some barbecue chicken. I think that's some toast or English muffin maybe. And then our fruits, green beans, and sweet potatoes, right? So a really excellent plate. But plates don't always look like this, right? Where we have kind of 4 different things. So I also really like this one on the bottom right of the page, which is ultimately going to be a tuna sandwich, right? But they kind of separated it out here to visually show you that, even though that's all going to be one thing, right? The quantity should still be kind of in the portion of how that plate would work. Okay. Some more nutrition recommendations to think about. When we go back to that graph I showed with the nutrition variables before, suggesting that youth with autism drink a good amount more sugar sweetened beverages per day than other youth, but also all youth are drinking a bit too much of these. And so really the recommendation would be that we don't have any sugar sweetened beverages in the day, but that would be pretty difficult. So I would say a good recommendation is trying to keep it at 1. And so I think oftentimes families, things they don't count in this are like juice in the morning, things like apple juice and orange juice. They have a lot of sugar and they don't have all the nutritional qualities that eating whole fruit would. So for example, eating an apple is going to give you lots of fiber, but drinking apple juice will not do that. And it is going to have a lot of sugar. So that's one of the reasons we want to reduce these. And so thinking about having only 1 or less a day would be a really good goal. So this includes soda, energy drinks, sweet tea, all of that. Capri Suns, whatever it is, trying to limit those. A lot of kiddos struggle with drinking water. And so there are things you can do to try to help them out with that. So one is as you're reducing these juices, you can just start diluting them, right? So maybe you give normally a whole cup of apple juice. You could do 3/4 of a cup of apple juice and 1/4 a cup of water. And that can kind of slowly adjust over time, and kiddos get more used to that flavor. Or in a regular water, you can do the fruit infused water or get the sugar-free flavored droplets, and those can help kids be willing to engage in that a little bit more. Another recommendation is to limit our meals to 3 meals and 2 snacks a day. This is particularly for kids, maybe 1 to 2 snacks for adults. So what this goal is getting at is a lot of people do what we call as grazing throughout the day. And so that's rather than focusing on what we're eating in our meals and snack times, which we often put more thought into, right, for a full meal. We kind of just throughout the day, we grab stuff, right? I'm going to grab some chips now. I'm going to work a little bit more. I'm going to eat a cookie, eat a little bit more. Then I'm going to go make myself a coffee. And then when it comes to lunchtime, I'm maybe not as hungry, or I'm still hungry and I eat a whole meal there, and I just keep eating all day long. What this does is it sometimes can make us not hungry at meal times, which if that's when we're having our more nutritious options, that could not be great. Additionally, it can make us eat mindlessly. And so what I mean by that is if I'm watching, television, things like that, and I have a big old bag of Cheetos, right? I'm eating them and I'm enjoying them. They're good Cheetos. I'm not paying attention to how much I'm eating. So maybe if I had served myself a portion, I might have grabbed myself a little handful, put it in a bowl and eaten that. Now I would have been totally full and fine. But I didn't do that. I just grabbed the big bag, and I might just eat, 3 times as much or maybe more than that than what I would have actually wanted. But I'm not paying attention to how hungry I am or how full I am because I'm engaging in something else, right? I'm watching TV. So that leads me to my next recommendation, which is eating with limited distractions, right? So having those structured meal times, but during those meals, we all come to a table as a family, and this is whatever table you might have in your home. This could be a dining room table, sitting around a bar in a kitchen, sitting around your coffee table, coming all together as many family members as possible, and eating a meal and focusing on the food that we're eating and focusing on conversation with each other, but not on our iPads or television or phones, playing with toys. We really want to focus on the food so that we can mindfully eat. Other things to consider, it can be really helpful for youth that struggle with healthy choices to give them some choices in the matter. So for example, if we're trying to get that healthy plate where we're going to do half fruits and vegetables, right? Maybe offer them, do you want peaches or apples tonight? Do you want green beans or asparagus tonight, right? And giving them some choice in the matter can be good. Also, we want to make healthy choices easily available. So what we often do is we grab the easiest thing there is when we're hungry, right? Especially at snack times. So this could be chips, cookies, just whatever is kind of right there on the counter, readily available. And if we have like a fruit, that's going to require a lot more work. So for example, we've got a watermelon that we're going to have to cut up, or a mango that we're going to have to peel and chop. That's a lot of effort. And even a kid having to ask their parent to do that is quite a few steps, right? It's not nearly as easy as just grabbing like a chocolate chip granola bar, right? And so one of the things that you can do that can help increase healthy choices is just having these super readily available. So meaning when you buy them, you go ahead and pre-prepare them, or you buy them pre-prepared. You keep them at the very front of your fridge, the very front of your pantry, on the counter, right? That's the stuff that you see when you walk in, right? So when I walk in, I say, oh, there's, some bananas and apples. Those are some choices I have right now. I open the fridge. The first thing I see are carrots and snap peas. Those are going to increase the chance that we pick that as a snack versus if we would have had to have digged for those or intentionally sought them out. And lastly, here for tips and tricks for our nutrition is to not use food as a reward. So this one I wanted to bring out because I know this is often done in ABA therapy. And so I am all about using rewards. Rewards are excellent. We try not to use foods as rewards because what is often used as a reward is desserts and dessert items. And what happens is you're teaching a kiddo that is the good food, and that these yucky foods are not as good. And they're the things that you kind of have to torture your way through to get to the good food. So for example, if you eat your vegetables, you can have dessert. What that tells a kid is vegetables are bad and dessert is good, and I need to work for the good one. And so over time, those messages can kind of feel a little stronger, and we don't want to send that. And so I really would encourage you trying to find other types of rewards for kids. All foods are okay to have, right? It's okay to have dessert. It's okay to have fruits and vegetables. We don't want to kind of hierarchy those for them if possible. We just want to encourage all the healthy foods in a balanced diet. And so other things to use as rewards are trying to find like cheap, small things like little toys from the dollar store, right? Or experiences with you or with other family members, extra time engaging in something they like, getting to go play outside. Those would all be excellent ideas, trying to limit how often we are bribing kids with dessert. Bribing or using as a reward. I didn't mean to equate those. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about picky eating today. So I actually work in the feeding clinic, clinically here at the University of Kansas Medical Center, and I will say about 90 to 95% of the people that are referred to us in feeding clinic are youth with autism who are struggling with picky eating. And so this is a very common thing that's happening, and most people don't even get referred for it. Most people just have to kind of struggle with these concerns at home. And so I'm hoping to give you guys some preliminary guidance that can be helpful when your kids do struggle with picky eating, if they do. So I would say these are specific recommendations for those that struggle with this. And so if your kiddo's not doing this, then you don't kind of have to do necessarily all these things. So one of the things that is really important when we think about picky eating is to everybody to acknowledge what their responsibility is when we come to the table. And so there's parent responsibilities and there are child responsibilities. And usually when we get conflict at the table, it is because either the parent or the child is trying to take on the other person's responsibility. And so that's what we want to limit. And so being clear on our responsibilities can help us here. So a parent's responsibility in these situations is, or for all meals and all snacks, you get to decide what you're serving to your child. That is up to you. You get to offer whatever meal it is. And we do recommend that you're always offering some foods that you'll know they'll like. We actually recommend you do half a plate of preferred foods and half a plate of non-preferred or new foods. And so you're regularly exposing them to new foods, but there's also something on there that you know they're going to eat. You're not trying to kind of torture them or starve them until they eat this other new food. You're going to serve them something safe. But it is your decision what to serve on that plate. It's your decision when you serve it, right? So I recommend those 3 meals and 2 snacks a day, but you get to pick when we're eating. And you also get to pick where it's eaten, right? Are we eating this at the table or the living room? Where is the okay place? But a child's responsibility is if they eat. This is really important because as a parent, when you make all this food and you work really hard to put this meal out for your kid and then they don't want to eat it, that can feel all sorts of different ways. It can feel like, oh my gosh, they have to eat or they're going to get, sick or something. It can feel like it's rude, right? I worked so hard for this, they should eat it. And there can just be a lot of pressure there. And so we don't want to pressure kiddos to eat. The reason for that is the more we pressure, the more pushback we get. And so we don't want to create that pushback. We want to have meal times be a really comfortable place for us to eat and explore new foods if we want to, and if not, that's okay. So, and also we want to teach kids to listen to their own hunger cues. If they are not hungry, even if you're like, I'm sure they're hungry, that's okay. We want to give them that opportunity to kind of regulate their own hunger. That's with us giving 3 meals and 2 snacks a day, so that if I come to breakfast and I say, I'm not hungry, I'm not going to eat, the next snack time is going to be probably mid-morning, right? And so they're going to have another opportunity. They're going to be okay to wait until then. And so I can kind of take some of the pressure off of you, right? They get to decide if they eat. They also get to decide which foods they eat and how much of that. It kind of just all of that part. You give the plate and then it's up to them at that point. So I went over a lot of this here, right? But the recommendations for your responsibilities, right, are to have that plate of half foods they like and half foods that are new or non-preferred, offering 3 meals and 2 snacks a day. And then I really recommend eating as a family together with no electronics. Make this time fun and not about the food. It's not about who eats what or pressuring people or maybe being upset that, it didn't go as well. You did your part. You put the food there, you chose it, and you served it, which is excellent. And now we can focus on silly topics like how, silly stories or how your day was or what your favorite animal is, right? Make the mealtime about other things. So really the goal when we think about picky eating is exposure. So when I talked about offering that plate of half new and non-preferred foods, that's part of this goal here. We want to expose our picky eaters to food that is new or non-preferred, because oftentimes when somebody doesn't like something, then we take it away forever. There's actually a lot of research to suggest, especially with food, that you have to try something like 18 times before you have a full opinion of it. And so you might feel like I've tried something and maybe over time, I liked it a little bit more, right? And it's because our taste buds change and our experiences with that can be different. And so we want your kid to be exposed to these foods over and over and over again, even if they've already rejected them. So we're not pressuring them to eat them, we're just exposing them to them. What this can do is having it on the plate, we can smell it, right? We might push it around a little bit, which gets us a little bit more used to the texture, right? So whatever it is that might be difficult about that food for us, we're seeing it more, becoming more comfortable with it. So other ways to expose your kids to food without it just being on the plate is to have your child cook with you. Once again, there's no pressure to eat anything, right? So you might be making something for another family member and you can have them help cook and they don't have to ever taste it. They can play with food objects at non-meal times, right? So maybe opening a can of beans and allowing them to play in it, right? Or make crafts out of pasta. That can all be more exposure. And then also just making sure that you're eating a wide variety of foods near your child. Model the behavior that you want to see. And also them seeing you eat it, without pressuring them to eat it, can oftentimes show them, hey, that's a safe food, that's totally fine, right? A lot of kiddos struggle with new or non-preferred foods being on their plate. So they might have a behavioral reaction, like I'm not going to eat anything on the plate, or maybe they'll throw things. And so we definitely don't want any of that. One way to help prevent this is to offer something called a no thank you bowl. So we put a little bowl next to the plate, an empty bowl, then you can say anything you don't want, you can just put in there. And that way they're forced to interact with the food. Maybe they have to, put their fork in a carrot and scoot it over, but they get to interact with a little bit more exposure. And also it gives them something constructive to do and shows them that kind of touching this food is okay. Okay, so those would be my recommendations for kind of just kiddos struggling a little bit with picky eating. I would just keeping that exposure going. For anyone that is very picky, really struggling with this or really struggling with textures, I would also recommend adding something called food trials into your day. So this is something we do not do at mealtimes. It has not anything to do with mealtimes. I would think of this as like a therapy that your kid's engaging in, a little therapy time you're going to do outside of mealtimes. And what this looks like is calling your child over and having 2 new or non-preferred foods in your hand. I would pick something that's similar to something they like, but maybe that they don't know these ones or they haven't liked these in the past. So for example, if your kid likes apples, maybe I would have a pear and carrots. A pear because it's kind of similar to an apple, and carrots because they're brightly colored and crunchy like an apple, right? Maybe something like that. Or it could be if your kid only likes one kind of crackers, it could be 2 different kind of crackers that look kind of similar. And so you're going to hold out the 2 options and you're going to ask your kiddo to pick one. And once they pick one, you're going to say, okay, touch the carrot, right? And then as soon as they touch the carrot, you're going to say, oh my gosh, excellent job. I'm so proud of you. Like, let's go play outside. You did excellent today. That's the whole thing. They did their food work for the day. They touched the carrot, which is really easy for some kiddos and really hard for other kiddos, but we're going to scoot it forward over time. And so, but you always start there, even if you think my kid can touch the food, that'd be fine. You start there so you can show them how easy this is. As long as they do the thing you ask, we all get really excited and we move on. If they don't do the thing you ask, that's okay. You just say, okay, we'll try again tomorrow. And tomorrow you might want to offer like a fun reward for engaging in it, but we're not going to push too hard. We want them to learn that this is easy and fun and not a really big deal. So as we move on to the next day, let's say they had tried that carrot, they touched it. On the following day, because they mastered it, they touched that carrot better than anyone's touched a carrot before, right? You're going to ask them to move forward. So now I'm going to say, okay, kiss it, right? And if the kiddo kisses the carrot, just puts it up against their lips, right? Oh my gosh, excellent job, well done. And then we're done. That was the whole day. We don't move on, we just stop there. And they get to know how awesome they did. And the next day, we're going to try licking it. Then we're going to try biting it. So that just means putting your teeth marks in it, and that's it. And then maybe chewing it and spitting it out, and chewing it and swallowing it. So different kids would take these at different paces, but we can offer kind of small rewards along the way to overcome the parts that are hard. This ultimately gets us really used to and exposed to a food over time, and we take it slow and at their own pace. So that is one way to do this. So we oftentimes recommend doing this at least once a day at non-meal times if you're really struggling with picky eating, or even twice a day if you can get the school on board, and maybe they can do one and you can do one at home. I believe we're going to send out these slides to anyone that wants them. So I put, so these are some links that you obviously cannot click on, but you could if we get the slides. So there are some Instagram accounts and websites here that I think can be good resources. So I love Feeding Littles and Kids Eat in Color are really great accounts for those that would struggle with picky eating. They give different ideas, ways to talk about things, ways to serve food, all different options that can help. They're very consistent with what I talked about today, but they give some really practical examples, which are awesome. Notable Nutrition is a dietitian-led account from actually someone who just left the University of Kansas Medical Center, but they work at Children's Mercy now. They're a really great dietitian that gives really good food information. You can make sure you're working on feeding yourself and your kiddos nutritious food. And then just some nutrition websites. We have My Plate, which is what I talked a lot about today, and then Healthy Children and the American Heart Association. They all give really great recipe ideas, really great ways to think about different food items, or ways to talk about this with your kids, which can be great things to look at. Okay. So moving on to goal setting now. So like I said, and I hope nobody feels overwhelmed with the information at this point, but I think it can be really easy to either feel overwhelmed or feel really motivated to tackle a bunch of stuff at once. So anytime I listen to somebody's, a long time ago, before I know things you know now, and when I would go to something that would make me feel like I wanted to be healthier, I'd say, okay, I'm going to start exercising every single day, and I'm going to eat healthy all the time, right? And so that would be my goal. And I'm going to start tomorrow. Tomorrow's the day, I'm going to do it. I'm going to crush it. And what this would mean is that I would, restrict a lot of stuff that I really kind of wanted to eat but couldn't. I would try to go out of my way to exercise, and I'd be really good at this for like 2 days, maybe 3, if that was a good run, right? Because that was a lot to tackle at once. Right? I was trying to get good sleep and exercise every day, and but I still had my whole life that I was trying to work with, right? And it's hard. And then I would just stop and say, you know what, it's not the time. I'll try another time. So that's what most people do. That was not in any way what I want you guys to do. Even if you have these beautiful goals to tackle all these things, it is most successful. People are most successful when they make small goals and small progress over time. So I'd really recommend that you don't try that. And instead you pick something small, and we can talk about a way to make a goal today that might make you more likely to be successful. So broadly, goal setting is super, super important. It helps us be intentional about what we're doing, and it helps us make and monitor our progress. So ideally, I'd like you guys to kind of work through an activity with me now. Thinking in your head as I work through this, you can kind of take your own example. So I want you to pick an area, ideally something we talked about today, but it could absolutely be a different health behavior or goal in your life. but an area that you would like to make an improvement in. So this could be something like eating healthier, increasing your physical activity, working on picky eating, right? What's something that you want to do or you want to do for your family? And then we're going to work on making that a SMART goal together. So many people know what SMART goals are, but for those that don't, I'm going to break it down and here in a moment. But generally, this is just a strategy for making a good goal. And by good, I mean a goal that is more likely to be effective and work out for you. So I'm going to start with a general goal here, saying that I want to eat healthier, right? Oftentimes people say things like this, right? And it's totally true and fair. They want to eat healthier. That's their goal. But it's not very specific, right? If I say tomorrow I'm going to eat healthier, what exactly am I going to do? And how will I know if I've done it? Like at the end of the day, am I going to say, did I do it today or no? Do I have to be perfect all day long for it to count? Or if I ate, one piece of broccoli, did that count? Right. And so it can be a little vague. And so we want to make these things crystal clear to help make sure we are working towards that goal. So I'm going to take my original goal of eat healthier, and I'm going to work through the steps of a SMART goal, which are to make your goal specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. But I want you, as best you can, or you can always do it after, to try to take your goal and adapt it as I go through. Okay. So the first thing here is to make it specific. So this means to pick an area to focus on, right? Eating healthier is too vague, right? So what can I pick as an area to focus on? So maybe I could, try to eat more whole grains, or I could try to increase my fruit intake, right? For today's example, I'm going to try and increase my vegetable intake, okay? So I picked an area, right? I'm going to increase my vegetable intake. The next part is to make it measurable. So how will I know if I've increased it? One is it can be a good idea to know how many vegetables I'm eating now, right? That can be a good thing to know. So on a basic day, am I getting 0, 1, 5, right? Where am I at with that? So I'm going to say right now I'm at like 1.5 to 2, right? So measurable goal might be, I'm going to skip to realistic real quick. So when I set a goal here, if right now I'm doing 1.5 to 2 vegetables a day, I'm thinking about cups of vegetables. A realistic goal would not be like 5 cups. That'd be more than doubling my usage, right? That would be quite a bit. Or if you're at 0 right now, you going all the way to 3, that would be a pretty big jump. And that might not be super realistic, even if you feel like, oh, I could totally do that. You just want to think about a habit that you can consistently do, right? And so if you're at 0 right now, I would say 1 would be a great place to start. And so you want to set a realistic goal to start. So for me, being about 1.5 to 2, I'm going to set a goal of 3 cups of vegetables a day. So that's measurable and realistic. And then we also want to think about making it achievable. I think this is when you want to pause for a second and say, what's getting in the way of me doing this now? Why haven't I already been doing this, right? And for different things, that can be all sorts of different reasons. It can be time, it can be money, it can be, I just don't even think about it, right? It's not on my radar, right? There can be all sorts of things. For me with the vegetables, sometimes it's that I don't want to go through and like cook them, right? Like, oh my gosh, all the effort to make a whole nother side or something for dinner. So one way that I might be able to make my goal achievable is by buying like pre-cut vegetables or prepackaged vegetables, or vegetables that are pretty yummy to eat cold, right? Like a little vegetable tray. I could just buy a vegetable tray and eat that as my side on my lunch. And that doesn't require much prep. So that could be one way that I could do that. And the last part of a SMART goal is to make it timely. What this means is we need to be checking on our progress, right? If we just say, I'm going to do this now, and then you don't really ever do it, there's not really a clear time to check in with yourself, see what's going well or what's not going well, and you may or may not do it, right? But sometimes what researchers suggest, when you set a goal, like in a short time frame, then you're more likely to do it. So for me, I might say, okay, at what point do I want to check in and say, have I been doing this? And if not, I need to go back. I need to maybe make it more achievable or more realistic, or maybe set a different goal because that's not a priority for me right now. So for me, that might be in a month or so. So we have a new goal here at the bottom, right? So instead of just, I'm going to eat healthier, a smart goal would be saying by a month from now on July 8th, I'm going to be eating at least 3 cups of vegetables per day, right? And the way that I'm going to make this more achievable is to buy those pre-prepared veggies and placing them on the table during each meal, right? So that's how I could make my goals smart, but there's lots of ones. So for physical activity, right? What do you want to do? Do you want to increase that moderate to vigorous physical activities? Do you want to do some like aerobic type things like running or swimming? Or do you want to focus on strength first, right? Which one of those? How many times are you going to do it? Once again, if you're at 0 right now, 5 times a week is not a good starting place. That's not very realistic, right? How about we just start with 1 or 2? Right? And be really specific about it. How will you know if you've done it? If you do 1 push-up, did that count? Or does it need to be, twice a week for at least 10 minutes? That's a very specific goal that we can say, yes, we did it, or no, we did not. Okay. How can I make it achievable? Could I put it in my calendar? Can I get a buddy to do it with me so that, they'll be expecting me there? That can be good ways to do it. Things to think about as it relates to families and setting these goals. It is really best to set goals collaboratively as much as possible. So coming together with your youth or with your husband or wife, whatever it is, and saying, what kinds of things do we want to work on, right? So if they're a picky eater, is there anything you see your friends eating that you really want to try one day? Maybe not right now, but one day. It can, talking through how it can be helpful to each day, right? How our bodies feel different some days when we eat one thing or another, and using that to help set a goal. Those can all be ideas. And then I'm going to reiterate this because I think it's just really important. People who make small and consistent changes are a lot more successful than people who try to change a lot of things at once. So I really hope that you can think about just one thing that I said today or that you've been thinking about maybe that you think would make a positive health change in your or your child's life. And just set a small, simple goal, right? You can always build on it. If the goal is 5 times a week to exercise in the end, that's excellent. You don't have to be there the very first week. And if you do that, that's awesome. But if you set your goal at 2, you'll can at least get those 2. And if you get more, cool. But shoot for a realistic goal at first. Well, that is all I have for you guys today. But I'm open to taking questions.
Yeah, thanks, Brittany. While people, if you're thinking about questions, you can put them in the question box. If you are on Facebook, you can add them. I don't see any, but I have a few. Let me just find them real quick. Couple of things. The no thank you bowl. I like that idea, but what happens when they put all that food in the no thank you bowl and then they want more of what they really like?
Yeah,
I mean, how are they really learning to eat the picky stuff if they're always putting it in that bowl and you're giving them more of the other stuff?
Yeah, I think the no thank you bowl does a few things. So one, it teaches, and this goes along with that not pressuring to eat. So it teaches the kiddo that you're kind of going to respect that choice to not eat it, and they can scoot it over there. And so it doesn't prevent against what you're saying. So one thing that can help prevent against that is never offering different food. So you are going to offer what you're offering that night. So you do want to give a safe food option. So maybe for a kiddo, maybe the plate is like a PB&J with carrots and apples, right? And so they don't want the carrots and apples. They put them in the no thank you bowl, and they want another PB&J. I think it's fair game for you to give them that, assuming that you have those resources at home. You can't give more than you have, and you can give them that. But that's the only thing. So if they say, I'm not eating any of this, I want pizza rolls, they can make that choice, but that is not what's on the menu. They don't get to decide what is being served. That was the parent's responsibility, right? And so they can refuse to eat, but they'll wait until that next snack or meal time, right, to engage. But you did offer a safe food, right? And they chose not to eat it. That's important there. So can it lead to that? Sometimes, yeah. But when they see over time, the exposure still happened there. They probably weren't eating it in the first place. And so this way they've interacted with the food, they've put it there, and hopefully over time, they're more likely to try it and change it. If you think my kiddo would just never, ever try or change it, it might be a good way. That might be a good thing to start with, do the food trials at the same time at a safe non-meal time. But we don't want to have that pressure at the meal time because it can create more conflict. It can create us not wanting to come to the table. And that just creates more resistance for kids broadly.
I gotcha. My child, young man, is 28 now, so that just doesn't work. And I've always been just as picky of an eater. So I remember being forced to eat what I didn't like. So I always said as a parent, I was never going to force my child, and I don't. But I do ask him to try something, take a bite of it if you don't like it. That's it. So he has done that in the past. But what do you say about like the older kids? Again, that's just my parenting style. But what about the older kids? Yeah, he's 28, but let's say they're in their teens now. What would you say to a parent whose child is on the spectrum and are picky eaters that are teens?
Yeah, I think that's when working collaboratively can be one of the best things to do. And so that the question I said before about like, is there a food you've seen your classmates or friends eat, right? That you might want to try. We asked a kiddo that the other day, and they eat peanut butter sandwiches, but people at school eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And so they were interested in jelly. And although you might say, well, that's not really, we probably want them eating like fruits and vegetables. Creating that flexibility where they're more willing to try new things and doing that in a safe way, we can ultimately get to that goal. We think of that as a long-term goal, So I think it's about trying to have them, if cognitively they can, understand why it might be important to do these things. For a lot of kiddos that are involved in like sports or things like that, going at it from that angle, that they can run faster, be stronger, they can do all of those things better if they eat nutritious foods, right? And they'll feel better throughout the day. A lot of our kiddos struggle with things like constipation, right? So finding whatever matters to them and trying to motivate it that way a little bit, but ultimately it does need to be collaborative. Another thing you can do is not put it so much on them and either put it on yourself or the family, right? So like, gosh, I'm really trying to eat more vegetables because like I have just noticed that I feel so much better when I do. Like, what do you think I could do to do this, right? And then talking through it, sometimes they'll be willing to help you or join you, things like that. So, but it does, I think at a teenager's age, forcing doesn't work, right? And it can create conflict. And so, and definitely true for adults, right? I can say all day long, you should just try things, right? I think you try things in ways that you're comfortable doing it, right? And so figuring out how that is for you and starting with things that are closer to things we're comfortable with, right? So if you already like carrots, you've been good with carrots all this time, and you're just struggling with other vegetables, can you cook your carrots a different way? Can you eat your carrots a different way? That creates a little bit more flexibility, right? And then maybe one day we can try the spinach that we're not near now, right? But we little kind of baby goals there.
So I have another question, and this one kind of killed me. When you said don't offer food as a reward, and so are you talking about just kids? Because that's what I do to myself. Like if I get this done, or if I, hit this goal, I can go get myself a piece of cheesecake from the Cheesecake Factory. So,
yeah,
I think shouldn't be doing that either.
It's a good question.
Mindset.
I think
that I don't know.
Yeah, in some ways, it's definitely a strong. People that work with picky eating feel it really strongly. I think generally we try not to do that. I think even if you say, so that's picky eating, but even in my obesity work, we try not to do that, right? Because we don't want to associate food with a reward. We want to associate food with hunger. And so if I do really great and I get to eat a cake, yay, right? And then I had a really bad day, so I get to eat cake. And
Pretty much.
and I totally get that, right? But what we're not doing there is eating because we're hungry. It's okay to eat cake. I have no problem with cake, but when we're always associating it with these other things, we're not eating because we're hungry, and that can kind of affect our food cues a little bit. And once again, it kind of shows us that this one food is better than all the other foods, and that's the food we're working towards and getting to earn, right? Versus kind of making all of our foods more neutral to ourselves. So when I think about for kiddos, it's kind of about teaching that healthy relationship with food. So for adults, it's a little bit different because you've probably learned your own relationship with food at this point. And so I would say it's up to you if you want to change that, right? Like if you think, yeah, I would love to reward myself with other things, right? So that every time I do something good or have a great day, it doesn't impact my health goals, right? So that could be something where you're like, okay, next time I do good, instead of going to get the cake or the ice cream, I will go to the movies, right? Or I'm going to get my husband to give me a massage, right? And that could be a new perk, right? That you can try to kind of mix up. But it doesn't mean if you've done that in the past that it's like totally wrong or terrible. But that would be one way to think about it.
I think a lot of us, especially, well, even teens and younger, but we think about celebrations, and we always celebrate with food, right? Like birthday parties, weddings, anniversaries, everything we do, we usually celebrate it around food. So it's kind of, when you think about it that way. So anyways.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And all humans are really strong at associating things, right? So not just celebrations, but for people that eat in front of the TV. Sometimes when you go and sit in front of the TV, you'll be cued to be hungry, right? You go to a party after you just had a giant meal, but because normally at parties you snack, now you want to eat food, even though you're not hungry at all. So try to make new associations is what I try to recommend. And if it's with food, could it be, like every single party I get invited to, I bring a vegetable tray. I don't know if that means people hate me coming to parties or not, but for me, I actually do associate.
You know what you're going to eat.
Yeah, I eat all of it, but I make sure there's a balance there for myself.
Yeah. We have a comment in here. Food is my love language. Haha. So yeah. Totally get that. Before I ask a couple of other questions or make some comments, does anybody have any questions? You feel free to just take yourself off of mute and ask the question. Okay. Well, those all those activities you mentioned, because I get a lot of families that will call me and they will say, I need to do something social. My, child needs to be out and be with people more. And I'll always ask them, I'm like, well, what about sports? Oh, my child hates sports, or they don't get the rules, so they hate sports. But then you're not getting them the activities, like you said. So, some of those activities that you kind of mentioned, I can't wait to share with others too.
Yeah, I'm
different
so glad.
ways.
No, I think that's, I also try to think about like broadening people's minds when they say they don't like sports. I think actually just before we started this talk, I told you that I'm not sporty.
Yes, you did.
That's not really how I would identify, but I think there's more things that we don't think about, like dance, right? Dance can be a social and active thing, martial arts, right? Those can be ways that people that might say, well, I don't really like sports, trying that might be something that's a little bit different that they do enjoy. A frisbee golf league, like trying to think of our less traditional sports, I think can be a really good strategy. And for our teenagers and stuff, like their like silks classes and like, all those are hard. That's all I'm saying for teenagers. There's different things that people can get into. And so trying to broaden that horizon, I think can be, but I've also worked with many families that you just say no to all of those. And that's go to our at-home activities. Trying that.
Yeah, I know a lot of families that will just say no to everything, and it's like, you gotta open up somewhere. You gotta try something somewhere. or you're still going to have the same problem that you've already said. So just take 5 minutes and do something like what you've mentioned. So
yeah. I also think if they have any friends or things in similar situations, what do they do for activity? Could you join them, right? I think the more social we can make these things, the
play
better.
dates to get outside and run around. So
Yeah.
most definitely. All right, last chance if anybody has any questions. If not, well, I want to thank Brittany for being here tonight. I appreciate it. And let me see real quick if I can find this. I should have found this before. What we have next, coming up next month. This is somewhere here. Give me 1 second. Okay. The next training session, we are off in July, but we will be back in August, and we will be talking about the CHASE program with Families Together. The CHASE program provides assistance to families in Johnson County who have justice-involved youth. Our program assists with IEP and 504 services, as well as one-on-one support with the youth. They have created a fun and engaging program that encourages positive mindset, nurturing relationships, and pro-social opportunities within the community. So look forward to that sign up and email, and we will see you all in August. Enjoy the rest of your summer. Thanks, Brittany.
Thank you. You have a good one.